Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of The Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and thank you for joining us for this episode. I would like to start our first show of the year with some very exciting news. Over the holidays, Haunted Talks passed over 500,000 downloads, a number that would be impossible to believe when we first started. On behalf of all of us, we would like to thank all of you who have joined us on this journey and become part of our Haunted Talks family. It feels like we've only scratched the surface, as there are so many topics still to be explored and so many fascinating conversations yet to have. Thank you for listening and supporting us. The best is yet to come. Every year, in the dead of winter, I really look forward to sharing with you a reading of a classic Victorian ghost story. This winter, I have chosen The Haunted and the Haunters, written by Edward Bulwer-Lytton in 1859. The story, which we will tell in 3 parts, is an exceptional example of Gothic fiction, a genre that emerged in the late 18th century and was characterized by the use of supernatural elements, melodramatic plots, and gloomy, often ruined settings. The story is not only a thrilling adventure, but it also delves into themes of betrayal, revenge, and the power of the mind, making it not just a spine-tingling journey, but also a thought-provoking one. Edward Bulwer-Lytton was a prominent British novelist, poet, and playwright of the 19th century. He was born in London in 1803 and was educated at various schools, including Cambridge University. After university, he studied law, but soon abandoned it for a career in literature. Bulwer-Lytton was a popular and successful author during his time, and was known for his imaginative and often sensationalist writing. He was also interested in the occult and spiritualism, which is reflected in some of his works, including the one we will be sharing. In 1843, he was elected a member of Parliament, but resigned his seat in 1844 to focus on his literary career. He passed away in 1873. The Haunted and the Haunters tells the story of an unnamed protagonist, his servant, and his dog, who visit a grand but dilapidated mansion that is rumored to be haunted. The story follows their experiences as they investigate the truth behind the ghost stories and the eerie occurrences that happen inside the house. The use of a first-person narrator allows the reader, or listener in this case, to experience the events of the story through the eyes of the protagonist, creating a sense of immediacy and intimacy. The narrator's initial skepticism serves to heighten the suspense and creates a sense of uncertainty, as the listener is left wondering whether the mansion is indeed haunted. One neat thing about the text itself is that people's names and street addresses are presented as a single letter, then a series of dashes. For example, the owner of the haunted house is referred to as Mr. J -- with the last name -- This is very reminiscent of information being redacted from top-secret government files and heightens the sense of mystery and danger, as if something is trying to be concealed. The Haunted and the Haunters is a jewel of Gothic fiction. It is a classic story of suspense and terror that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a hot drink, and get ready for a spine-tingling journey as we delve into part 1 of The Haunted and the Haunters. But before we get to that, it is a bit of a slower time of the year for us, given the horrors of winter in Canada, but we still have some fun and spooky things going on. Our Haunted Ottawa Jail Tour runs on weekends in January, and tours return every weekend in Toronto and Kingston as of the beginning of February. If you're looking for something fun and exciting to do around Valentine's Day, we are partnering with our friends at Phantoms of Yore for an investigation at the SDD Jail in Cornwall, Ontario, on February 10th and 11th. This is one of the coolest sites we get to investigate, full of dark history and ghost stories, and a place where our guests have recorded some particularly aggressive EVPs. If your Valentine has a spooky side and you are in Eastern Ontario, we hope you can join us for this special event. For tickets and information about our ghost tours and investigation at the SDD Jail, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. I also wanted to mention we are holding a really awesome contest right now for tickets to the Canadian premiere of Infinity Pool, a horror movie directed by Brandon Cronenberg, son of filmmaking horror legend David Cronenberg. After the film, there will be a live in-person Q&A with the director and star Alexander Skarsgård. If you are a horror movie fan in Toronto, you'll want to check this out. To enter the contest, just find our post on Instagram or Facebook, both at Haunted Walk, for all the details. You do need to enter by midnight on Sunday, January 22nd, so be sure to take action quickly if you want a chance to be part of this exclusive event. Lastly, to help us celebrate 500,000 downloads, if you have not already, we really hope you will leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. We excitedly read each and every one, and it really does help others discover the show and join our creepy family. A friend of mine, who is a man of letters and a philosopher, said to me one day, as if between jest and earnest, "Fancy, since we last met, I've discovered a haunted house in the midst of London." Really? Haunted? And by what? Ghosts? I asked. Well, I can't answer that question. All I know is this. 6 weeks ago, my wife and I were in search of a furnished apartment. Passing a quiet street, we saw on the window of one of the houses a bill, "Apartments Furnished." The situation suited us. We entered the house, liked the rooms, engaged them by the week, and left after the 3rd day. No power on earth could have reconciled my wife to stay longer, and I don't wonder at it. "What did you see?" I asked. "Excuse me, but I have no desire to be ridiculed as a superstitious dreamer. Nor, on the other hand, could I ask you to accept, on my affirmation, what you would hold to be incredible without the evidence of your own senses. Let me only say this. It was not so much as what we saw, or heard, in which you might fairly suppose that we were the dupes of our own excited fancy, or the victims of imposture in others that drove us away, as it was an undefinable terror which seized both of us whenever we passed by a door of a certain unfurnished room, in which we neither saw nor heard anything. Accordingly, on the 4th morning, I summoned the woman who kept the house and attended to us, and told her that the rooms did not quite suit us, and we would not be staying out our week. She said dryly, "I know why. You have stayed longer than any other lodger. Few ever stayed a second night. Now, before you a third." But I take it they have been very kind to you." "They who?" I asked, affecting a smile. "Why, they who haunt the house, whoever they are. I don't mind them. I remember them many years ago, when I lived in this house, not as a servant, but I know they will be the death of me someday. I don't care. I'm old and must die soon anyhow, and then I shall be with them, and in this house still." The woman spoke with so dreary a calmness that really it was sort of awe that prevented my conversing with her further. I paid for my week, and too happy were my wife and I to get off so cheaply. "You excite my curiosity," I said. "Nothing I should like better than to sleep in a haunted house. Pray, give me the address of the one you left so quickly." My friend gave me the address, and when we parted, I walked straight towards the house thus indicated. It was situated on the north side of Oxford Street, in a dull but respectable thoroughfare. I found the house shut up, no bill at the window, and no response to my knock. As I was turning away, a beer boy collecting pewter pots at the neighborhood areas said to me, "Do you want anyone at that house, sir?" "Yes," I responded. "I heard it was to be let." "Let? Why, the woman who kept it is dead, and has been dead these 3 weeks, and no one can be found to stay there, though Mr. J offered ever so much. He offered Mother, who chars for him, £1 a week just to open and shut the windows, and she would not." "Would not?" I asked. "And why?" "The house is haunted, and the old woman who kept it was found dead in her bed, with her eyes wide open. They say that the devil strangled her." "Pooh, you speak of Mr. J. Is he the owner of the house?" "Yes." "Where does he live?" "In G Street. Number... What is he? In any business?" "No, sir, nothing particular. A single gentleman." I gave the potboy the gratuity he earned for his liberal information, and proceeded to Mr. J. in G Street, which was close by the street that boasted the haunted house. I was lucky enough to find Mr. J. at home, an elderly man with intelligent countenance and prepossessing manners. I communicated my name and my business frankly. I said I had heard that the house was considered to be haunted, and that I had a strong desire to examine a house with so equivocal a reputation, that I should be greatly obliged if he would allow me to hire it, though only for a night. I was willing to pay for that privilege, whatever he might be inclined to ask. "Sir," said Mr. J. with great courtesy, "the house is at your service, for as short or as long a time as you please. Rent is out of the question. The obligation will be on my side, should you be able to discover the cause of the strange phenomena which at present deprive it of all value. I cannot let it, for I cannot even get a servant to keep it in order or answer the door. Unluckily, the house is haunted, and if I may use that expression, not only by night, but by day, though at night the disturbances are of a more unpleasant and sometimes a more alarming character. The poor old woman who died in there 3 weeks ago was a pauper whom I took out of a workhouse, for in her childhood she had been known to some of my family, and had once been in such good circumstances that she had rented that house of my uncle. She was a woman of superior education and strong mind, and was the only person I could ever induce to remain in the house. Indeed, since her death, which was sudden, and the coroner's inquest, which gave it a notoriety in the neighborhood, I have so despaired of finding any person to take charge of the house, much more a tenant, that I would willingly let it rent-free for a year to anyone who would pay its rates and taxes. How long is it since the house acquired this sinister character? I asked. That I can scarcely tell you, but very many years since. The old woman I spoke of said it was haunted when she rented it between 30 and 40 years ago. The fact is that my life has been spent in the East Indies and in the civil service of the company. I returned to England last year on inheriting the fortune of an uncle, among whose possessions was the house in question. I found it shut up and uninhabited. I was told that it was haunted, that no one would want to inhabit it. I smiled at what seemed to me so idle a story. I spent some money in repairing it, added to its old-fashioned furniture a few modern articles, advertised it, obtained a lodger for a year. He was a colonel, on half pay. He came in with his family, a son and a daughter, and 4 or 5 servants. They all left the house the next day, and although each of them declared that he had seen something different from what had scared the others, something still was equally terrible to it all. I really could not in conscience sue or even blame the colonel for this breach of agreement. Then I put in the old woman I have spoken of, and she was empowered to let the house in apartments. I never had one lodger who stayed more than 3 days. I do not tell you their stories. No 2 lodgers have been exactly the same phenomena repeated. It is better that you should judge for yourself than enter the house with an imagination influenced by previous narratives. Only be prepared to see and hear something or other, and take whatever cautions you yourself please. You have never had the curiosity yourself to pass a night in that house? I asked. Yes, I passed not a night, but 3 hours in broad daylight alone in that house. My curiosity is not satisfied, but it is quenched. I have no desire to renew the experiment. You cannot complain, you see, sir, that I am not sufficiently candid, and unless your interest be exceedingly eager and your nerves unusually strong, I honestly add that I advise you not to pass a night in that house. My interest is exceedingly keen, said I, and though only a coward will boast of his nerves in situations wholly unfamiliar to him, yet my nerves have been seasoned in such a variety of danger that I might rely on them, even in a haunted house. Mr. J said very little more. He took the keys of the house out of his bureau, gave them to me, and thanking him cordially for his frankness and his urbane concession to my wish, I carried off my prize. Impatient for the experiment, as soon as I reached home, I summoned my confidential servant, a young man of gay spirits, fearless temper, and as free from superstitious prejudice as anyone I could think of. F, said I, you remember in Germany how disappointed we were at not finding a ghost in that old castle, which was said to be haunted by a headless apparition. Well, I've heard of a house in London, which I have reason to hope is decidedly haunted. I mean to sleep there tonight. From what I hear, there is no doubt that something will allow itself to be seen or to be heard. Something perhaps excessively horrible. Do you think if I take you with me, I may rely on your presence of mind, whatever may happen? Oh, sir, pray trust me, answered F, grinning with delight. Very well then. Here are the keys to the house. This is the address. Go now. Select for me any bedroom you please, and since the house has not been inhabited for weeks, make up a good fire, air the bed. Well, see of course that candles are there for fuel. Take with you my revolver, and my dagger. So much for my weapons. Arm yourself equally well, and if you're not a match for a dozen ghosts, we shall be a sorry couple of Englishmen. I was engaged for the rest of the day on business so urgent that I had not leisure to think much on the nocturnal adventure to which I had plighted my honor. I dined alone, and very late, and while dining, read, as is my habit. I selected one of the volumes of Macaulay's essays. I thought to myself that I would take a book with me. There was so much of healthfulness in the style and practical life in the subjects that it would serve as an antidote against the influences of superstitious fancy. Accordingly, about 9:30, I put the book into my pocket and strolled leisurely towards the haunted house. I took with me my favorite dog, an exceedingly sharp, bold, and vigilant bull terrier, a dog fond of prowling about strange, ghostly corners and passages at night in search of rats. A dog of dogs for a ghost. It was a summer night, but chilly, the sky somewhat gloomy and overcast. Still there was a moon, faint and sickly, but still a moon, and if the clouds permitted after midnight, it would be brighter. I reached the house, knocked, and my servant opened with a cheerful smile. "All right, sir. And very comfortable?" "Oh," said I, rather disappointedly, "have you not seen or heard anything remarkable?" "Well, sir, I must own I have heard something queer." What? The sound of feet pattering behind me. Once or twice, small noises like whispers close to my ear. Nothing more. "You are not at all frightened?" "I? Not a bit of it, sir." And the man's bold look reassured me on that one point, namely, that happen what might, he would not desert me. We were in the hall, the street door closed, and my attention was now drawn to my dog. He had first run in eagerly enough, but had sneaked back to the door and was scratching and whining to get out. After patting him on the head and encouraging him gently, the dog seemed to reconcile himself to the situation and followed me and F through the house, but kept close at my heels instead of hurrying inquisitively in advance, which was his usual and normal habit in all strange places. We first visited the subterranean apartments, the kitchen and other offices, and especially the cellars, in which last there were 2 or 3 bottles of wine still left in a bin, covered with cobwebs and evidently, by their appearance, undisturbed for many years. It was clear that the ghosts were not wine bibbers. For the rest, we discovered nothing of interest. There was a gloomy little backyard with a very high wall. The stones of this yard were very damp, and what with the dust and smoke grime on the pavement, our feet felt a slight impression where we passed. And now appeared the first strange phenomena witnessed by myself in this strange abode. I saw, just before me, the print of a foot suddenly form itself, as it were. I stopped, caught hold of my servant, and pointed to it. In advance of that footprint, I suddenly dropped another. We both saw it. I advanced quickly to the place. The footprint kept advancing before me. A small footprint, the foot of a child. The impression was too faint thoroughly to distinguish the shape, but it seemed to us both that it was the print of a naked foot. This phenomenon ceased when we arrived at the opposite wall, nor did it repeat itself on returning. We remounted the stairs and entered the rooms on the ground floor. The dining parlor, a small back parlor, and a still smaller third room that had been probably appropriated to the footmen. All still as death. We then visited the drawing rooms, which seemed fresh and new. In the front room, I seated myself in an armchair. F placed on the table the candlestick with which he had lighted us. I told him to shut the door. As he turned to do so, a chair opposite to me moved from the wall quickly and noisily and dropped itself about a yard from my own chair immediately fronting it. "Why, this is better than turning the tables," said I with a half laugh, and as I laughed, my dog put back his head and howled. F, coming back, had not observed the movement of the chair. He employed himself now in stilling the dog. I continued to gaze at the chair, and fancied I saw on it a pale, blue, misty outline of a human figure, but an outline so indistinct that I could only distrust my own vision. The dog was now quiet. "Put back that chair opposite to me," said I to F. "Put it back to the wall." F obeyed. "Was that you, sir?" he said, turning abruptly. "I? What?" "Why, something struck me. I felt it sharply on my shoulder, just here." "No," said I, "but we have jugglers present, and though we may not discover their tricks, we shall catch them before they frighten us." We did not stay long in the drawing rooms. In fact, they felt so damp and so chilly that I was glad to get to the fire upstairs. We locked the doors of the drawing rooms, a precaution which, I should observe, we have taken with all the rooms we had searched below. The bedroom my servant had selected for me was the best on the floor, a large one, with 2 windows fronting the street. The 4-post bed, which took up no inconsiderable space, was opposite to the fire, which burned clear and bright. A door in the wall to the left, between the bed and the window, communicated with the room which my servant appropriated to himself. This last was a small room with a sofa bed, and had no communication with the landing place. No other door but that which conducted to the bedroom I was to occupy. On either side of the fireplace was a cupboard without locks, flush with the wall, and covered with the same dull brown paper. We examined these cupboards. Only hooks to suspend female dresses, nothing more. We sounded the walls, evidently solid, the outer walls of the building. Having finished the survey of these apartments, warmed myself a few moments, and lighted my cigar, I then, still accompanied by F, went forth to complete my reconnaissance. In the landing place, there was another door. It was closed firmly. "Sir," said my servant in surprise, "I unlocked this door with all the others when I first came. It cannot have gotten locked from the inside, for..." Before he finished the sentence, the door, which neither of us was touching, opened quietly of itself. We looked at each other a single instant. The same thought seized both. Some human agency might be detected here. I rushed in first. My servant followed. A small, blank, dreary room without furniture. A few empty boxes and hampers in a corner. A small window. The shutters closed. Not even a fireplace. No other door but that by which we had entered. No carpet on the floor. And the floor seemed very old, uneven, worm-eaten, mended here and there, as was shown by the whiter patches on the wood, but no living being, and no visible place in which a living being could have hidden. As we stood gazing round, the door by which we had entered closed as quietly as it opened before. We were imprisoned. For the first time, I felt a creep of undeniable horror. Not so my servant. "Why, they don't think to trap us, sir. I could break that trumpery door with a kick of my foot." "Try first if it will open with your hand," said I, shaking off the vague apprehension that had seized me, "while I unclose the shutters and see what is without." I unbarred the shutters. The window looked on the little backyard I have described before. There was no ledge without, nothing to break the sheer descent of the wall. No man getting out of that window would have found any footing till he had fallen to the stones below. F, meanwhile, was vainly attempting to open the door. He now turned around to me and asked my permission to use force. And I should state here, in justice to the servant, that far from evincing any superstitious terrors, his nerve, composure, and given gaiety amidst the circumstances so extraordinary compelled my admiration, and made me congratulate myself on having secured a companion in every way fitted to the occasion. I willingly gave him the permission he required. But though he was a remarkably strong man, his force was idle as his milder efforts. The door did not even shake to his strongest kick. Breathless and panting, he desisted. I then tried the door myself, equally in vain. As I ceased from the effort, again that creep of horror came over me. But this time, it was more cold and stubborn. I felt as if some strange and ghastly exaltation were rising up from the chinks of that rugged floor, and filling the atmosphere with a venomous influence hostile to human life. The door now very slowly and quietly opened of its own accord. We took ourselves into the landing place. We both saw a large, pale light, as large as the human figure, but shapeless and unsubstantial, move before us and ascend the stairs that led from the landing to the attics. I followed the light, and my servant followed me. It entered, to the right of the landing, a small garret, of which the door stood open. I entered in the same instant. The light then collapsed into a smaller globule, exceedingly brilliant and vivid, rested a moment on a bed in the corner, quivered, and vanished. We approached the bed and examined it. A half-tester, such as commonly found in attics devoted to servants. On the drawers that stood near it, we perceived an old faded silk kerchief, with the needle still left in a rent half repaired. The kerchief was covered with dust. Probably it had belonged to the old woman who had last died in that house, and this might have been her sleeping room. I had sufficient curiosity to open the drawers. There were a few odds and ends of female dress, and 2 letters tied round with a narrow ribbon of faded yellow. I took the liberty to possess myself of the letters. We found nothing else in the room worth noticing, nor did the light reappear, but we distinctly heard, as we turned to go, a pattering footfall on the floor just before us. We went through the other attics, in all 4, the footfall still preceding us. Nothing to be seen, nothing but the footfall heard. I had the letters in my hand. Just as I was descending the stairs, I distinctly felt my wrist seized, and a faint, soft effort made to draw the letters from my clasp. I only held them the more tightly, and the efforts ceased. And that is part 1 of The Haunted and the Haunters. Join us next Friday, January 27th, for part 2. Thank you once again for joining us for this episode and helping us achieve such an amazing milestone as 500,000 downloads. For tickets for our ghost tours or our special investigation at the STD jail in Cornwall, Ontario, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all at Haunted Walk for our latest news and updates. And if you have a moment to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen, it would mean a great deal to us. As always, a very special thank you to all of the people who have contributed to Haunted Talks over the years. The many guests and storytellers we have had on, and of course Michelle Dennis, our outstanding audio editor. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.